Well, John, another week, another array of incredibly incompetent, stupid gaffes from the stupidest guy to ever be the president of the United States, who's now infected with COVID. He told the American people that if you get the vaccine, you're not going to get COVID. Didn't he say something like that? We got to be careful how we talk about this, because even now quoting things said by the president of the United States could get you kicked off of YouTube.
That would be unfortunate. I think, if I remember correctly, I think it was just about a year ago exactly. But, again, I think it's one of those things where he probably meant well, and that's what he was told at the time, right?
Wishful thinking, maybe?
Yeah, well, we heard a lot of that. We heard that from Dr. Birx. We heard that from Dr. Walensky, that they were hoping that this would be the case. They were hoping. And quite frankly, to be honest, if you look at the wording in the EUA, it says that the whole point of this is that these particular treatments or preventatives or diagnostic products show promise. That's the whole idea. The whole idea is it looks like they're going to work, right? You don't approve of these things or authorize them if it looks like they're not going to work. So that's the gist of it. And yet a year later, this is the sad irony. And we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks now, how Xavier Becerra contracted it twice. Maxine Waters contracted it twice. Justin Trudeau contracted it twice. So this is the president's first time. I think he's 79 years old or something.
Yeah.
Yes, Secretary Becerra tested twice for this thing.
But the point I'm getting at, John, if you and I go out to a bar and some dope says, hey, I hope, Elon Musk gets to Mars or whatever, that's different than the president of the United States getting on TV and saying, we are going to Mars. Because you're like, oh, I guess we're going. So he said, go get it. Nothing's going to happen to you. And now he has the Rona.
Yeah, again, this was not the outcome I think anybody planned for. What are you going to say? Well,
here's another false headline.
Certainly don't wish him harm. That's the title of tonight's show. Please don't go, Joe. Oh, no.
Right.
Don't go. Wait, whoa. I don't wish him any harm. I want him to get better quick.
Stop.
Yeah. What do you
This is a false headline. Biden improving. No, he's getting worse by the day, but he's taking additional medication to treat COVID. This guy has been posting nonsense all over Twitter. I don't understand.
Who is
we got to be
guy?
careful what we say about. He's some dumb doctor on CNN, but we got to be careful what we say here, John, because literally, Deborah Birx has now published things in a book. The president of the United States has said things that if I say them here, I even saying in the title that Joe Biden has COVID got us a warning here on YouTube. So I want to make sure that people know in about 25 minutes, we're going to be doing our sponsor exclusive show on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourceTheTruth. What are we going to be talking about on the sponsor exclusive segment?
Well, we should probably make it perfectly clear that, we don't give any kind of medical advice on the show at all, right? We're commenting
YouTube
on news stories. Right. Well,
John, you froze. So we got another crappy VPN on your end, dude. Can you hear me? John, I hate the VPN, man. So you've disappeared. I think this problem will correct itself with you coming back about 30 seconds into a monologue, having no awareness that you are totally frozen to the internet. John, can you see me? Frozen. I hate the VPN. Okay, you're back. You just cut out for like 30 seconds. I hate the VPN.
Yeah.
FYI.
I agree with you. Isn't that lovely how that happens? Yeah.
What were you saying?
Okay, so take me back to where we cut out.
Well, I said that Joe Biden is stupid and he has COVID, and if I say anything about it here on YouTube, we're likely to get kicked off.
All right. So,
and what are we going to talk about tonight?
what we're going to get into tonight has to do with, again, the data, right? So let me introduce myself to any new viewers who are watching for the first time, who aren't understanding, why are we showing Joe Biden with MBS and that kind of stuff. So if the channel that we publish on, right? So here on YouTube, we publish on the Johnny Hoover channel, we publish on the John Cullen Investigates channel. And I've been researching this with Jason, I guess since the pandemic began. And if you go to the second slide of my deck, my background.
We didn't show everybody MBS yet. There he is, fist bumping. Dumb Joe.
Okay. All right. So we had this last week in our deck, and last week we showed that Joe was visiting Saudi Arabia, and everybody's making this big deal about the fist bump. And the reason for the fist bump was COVID protocol.
That's true.
So
did he know Joe had COVID, or has he got a fistful of COVID right here that he's like, have this?
Well, that's an interesting question here. So did Joe have COVID here? Did Joe get COVID here? Did MBS have COVID here? And does MBS have COVID now? Right. We don't know.
Another important question, John, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but Nancy rightly brings up that Brandon said he has cancer. And everybody's like, oh my God, he has COVID. Wait a minute. He just casually mentioned that he has cancer. That sounds worse.
Yeah, just like everybody. Does he have cancer? Well, he said that mom had to put the windshield wipers on to get the oil off the windshield, and everybody from the town had cancer like him, and so I think Corinne Jean-Pierre, is that her name? Am I close enough for horseshoes? Okay. So I think she said that he was referring to some skin cancer that he had removed. And, again, I've had that kind of stuff, I've had things removed from here or there. So I kind of get that. So again, if he's battling cancer, I think they kind of have to divulge that in a significant way. Maybe not, but I'm more interested in, we know Joe's got it now. This was a COVID protocol. We know they met, a week ago? We were talking about this a week ago, right? So,
yeah.
Did MBS get infected by Joe and Joe's entourage when they visited? Did Joe bring COVID to? I have no idea.
Wouldn't that be a diplomatic row? I mean, they would start blaming. Maybe you gave him COVID on purpose. What if he left a trail
of it? What if the people? He also, remember, he flew there from Israel. So what if there's a whole bunch of people in the Israeli cabinet entourage that met with him that also get sick this week? I mean, if MBS tests positive, you want to talk about a diplomatic row. We have got to keep our eyes on Riyadh. And let's see if MBS or any of the, the senior leadership out of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia test positive for coronavirus in the next week. That's gonna be a topic. So
definitely.
But why don't we go to the second slide? Go ahead,
folks. I'm doing great. Absolutely false. He's doing terribly.
All right. For those of you who aren't familiar with my background and why I wear the hat and the glasses, 34 years ago, I was at Oracle, and I worked with some big name people. And if I wasn't wearing the hat and glasses, they would know who I was pretty quickly. And I don't want to end up like Phil Haney or Dr. Timothy Cunningham. So I am incognito. So the hashtag that I use on Twitter is I am the Maps Daddy. And 34 years ago, when I was at Oracle, I helped design this mapping system from ESRI. We married the Oracle system and their mapping capabilities so that we could do things like this. Now, what you guys are seeing here on this map is something that I built custom for Laura Ingram. So when I first met Laura, and I was monkeying around with the maps and showing her Beijing and Shanghai and all that stuff, one of the things that they asked me was, if we sent you some money, could you build some maps? And I said, I don't know, let me see. And so I went in and I realized, I can just bang this stuff out. I don't have to buy any software. They had left the system open so that you could tweak it and do and I could just get in and do stuff with it. So I started building. Not really, not really, because it's an open system with open data, and it allowed me to make some configuration changes, shall we say. And what I did here in the map that you guys are looking at is I did a forecast. So this was very, very early on. This was probably April of 2020. And you were seeing forecasts coming out of other groups and whatever. And all this did basically is amplify what was happening already. And it just gave us a view as to what might happen 3, 4, 5 weeks down the line. And sure enough, that's pretty much what ends up happening. So this is a map that I custom tailored. I was I was the head of the project that worked with the ESRI guys from Oracle. So that's my background. And
Cool.
So data is my thing. And I want to tease the audience about what we're going to see at this patron only hour. So for those of you who are subscribers at Subscribestar, you can subscribe to Jason's Crowdsource the Truth. And Jason's got shows going on all week long. I'm just kind of one trick pony. So if you subscribe to Crowdsource the Truth, you get to see, everybody, Lee Stranahan, you get to see everything he's doing. My channel, if you go to Patreon or Subscribestar for I Am John Cullen, you get to see kind of these things. And from time to time, I'll post these graphs and things that I'm working on so that the patrons can, share them with their friends and family or whatever. And I'll share some things that I don't necessarily share on Twitter. So what we're going to look at, and when we go patron only tonight, this chart is key, because this is a huge break. This is another one of these phenomenon that you're not going to hear in the news. You're only going to hear it here, and we're going to show you. And it's all based on CDC data. In other words, I go to the CDC's website as a data expert. I download their data, and then I use the Apple charting software that comes with the Mac for free. What's it called? Numbers? Yeah. Numbers, yeah. So I use Numbers to make these 3D charts, and that's it. That's all I'm doing. I'm using their numbers, their data. I download it and make it look like this. That's it. It's not my data, right? It's not my data. This is CDC data. And what you guys are going to see tonight when we go patron only is a huge break. So I'll explain that later. Why don't we share
just
with
quickly
the YouTube
before we
audience?
do that, because somebody pointed out to me that Brandon has mistakenly said that Delaware has the highest incidence of cancer in the United States, but according to this, it's Kentucky. So he's bad-mouthing Delaware.
Isn't that a surprise? Isn't that a surprise that it's Kentucky?
Well,
Delaware is number 2, though.
That he's
it is
wrong.
number 2.
Okay, but
no, but it is number 2. It is number 2.
Okay,
but I'm surprised it's Kentucky. If you were going to ask me what was the number 1 state with cancer, I would have said New Jersey. And New Jersey doesn't even appear to be in the top 10.
Age-adjusted. See, I think we're having a problem here, because when you say the highest incidence of cancer, is it the number of people who get it, the number of people who die from it, how many people recover from it? He'll probably have a magical way of making his answer correct, but here's age-adjusted cancer rate. So the people who are getting it, I guess, he's still not right.
Minus Kentucky. No, he's number 2.
So, yeah, he's definitely number 2. I back you up on that. He's a giant turd, but back to
we've got a couple things that happened this week that we can talk about on YouTube. So CNN, we're allowed to tell you what CNN told you. So that's something we're allowed to tell you, right? So I can tell you what CNN told you already. CNN reported last Friday. So as we were doing our show last Friday, the story came out. Look at the time, 4:02 p.m. Eastern. Okay. So the story came out at 4 o'clock on Friday that the COVID-19 public health emergency has been extended in the United States. Okay, so this is the EUA. So you've got your EUA, you've got a public health emergency. These two are tied together. So this was extended on Friday at 4 o'clock. This is a common
nationwide
approach. Yeah, in the U.S., yes. This was by decree. Indeed. So you get the Biden administration on Friday extended the COVID public health emergency for another 3 months. Secretary Becerra officially renewed the declaration, extending it through October of 2022.
I have a funny anecdote for you, John. I just earlier today, I was looking at Instagram, and a friend of mine in LA has a kid. Maybe this kid is 5, cute little kid, and they're at the zoo or something, and the little girl is telling the mother this whole story about how, when I was little and we had COVID going on, you couldn't pet the goats because they didn't want you to touch them. But now we can go in the scary cave, but COVID is over. And I was like, see, this 5-year-old kid thinks that COVID is over. That's giving us kind of an insight into what somebody who doesn't watch the news is getting a general sense of based on the goat petting zoo and whatever.
Meanwhile, again, when we go to our patron-only hour, I'm going to show our supporters what's happening in Japan, what's happening in New Zealand. It's a mess. So whoever's telling you COVID's over is just bored of it or just can't take it anymore, which I understand. But you still have to look at the charts and look at the WHO and look at Johns Hopkins. You can't just say, I've had it with this. I get it, but that doesn't mean it's over. So sort of to look into this COVID-19 public health emergency that's extended in the U.S. So Secretary Becerra is really the one who makes the decision. He's the head of Health and Human Services in the United States. And this chart that you've got pulled up is sort of, I guess the supporting data, if you would say, for these decisions, right? And so this is just in the database world. So if you worked at Oracle, you know that database, so let me give you an analogy. I think you'll appreciate this, Jason. A database is kind of like a house. And there's all this information, all this stuff in the house, right? So you got picture frames and clocks and pictures up on the wall.
Can't find any of it, though.
No, but it's there. It's there somewhere. Yeah. Now, database provides something that's literally called a view. And a view would be like looking into the window of a house from outside the house. So if you're outside the house and you're looking in through a window, you can see some of the stuff in the house. Right. But you're not going to be able to see the stuff that's on the wall right around the inside 180 degree. You can't see around corners. So you won't be able to see everything. And so this is a really fundamental aspect of database design and stuff like that, is a view into the data. In other words, there's a lot of information in the database. How exactly, when we are looking at this data, what data are we getting to see? What data are we not getting to see? Right? Because we're only getting to see sort of a subset of the information. That information is what the CDC publishes. So they publish what's called a view of the data. And that view changes from time to time as they change their website and they make, modifications and stuff like that. It changes from time to time. But this is where we are right now as far as deaths, as far as people dying with COVID, or, that's the language they use, people dying with coronavirus disease. And if you look, we're all the way at the right-hand side. That's current, so as far to the right as you can go is current day. So this is the CDC's data. And
what is
this
it
is
telling
showing
me?
us,
It looks low here, all the way on the right.
Right. Now you got to be careful what you say, right? But again, it's like lower is smaller, right? It's like, in fact, when you look at how low it is, well, it's actually lower than it has ever been since the very, very beginning.
So,
it has never been this low.
How is that a surge if it's lower than ever?
That's kind of the part that is the part that I struggle with, is I don't quite understand. Again, this is just based on their data. This is just deaths. Okay. Now, if you go back up one slide to that green and blue pie chart, I'll explain what that is to people, because people wonder, what the heck is this? Well, the blue part are all the people in the United States that died with COVID that are under 50 years old. Everybody under 50 years old that died with COVID is in the blue piece.
It's still a large number. 70,000.
70,000, correct. But of those 70,000, 5% of those had just COVID on their death certificate.
Right.
The rest
according
of them
to the
had,
CDC.
According to CDC. And I'm going to show everybody that when we go into our Patreon hour, we're looking at nothing but CDC content. That's all we have. That's all we have to go by is the CDC and the WHO. So these are their numbers. I just make the, divide them the way the people want to see them. So this is above 50 and below 50. So the green, 946,000 people died with COVID. There were over 50. And 69,336 people, as of the time this report was pulled this week, were under 50. Then you get into the whole comorbidity thing with the 5% of the people had just COVID on the death certificate. 95% had on average 4 comorbidities. But now you go back to the slide we looked at a minute ago, which is below this. And yeah, it just appears that if this isn't finally depletion of susceptibles, my goodness,
Right.
What is? Right. Now, the other
Where's the
thing
monkeypox chart?
is, yeah. Now, the other thing you're going to notice is there's a little bit of a pattern developing here. If we've got 2.5 years of data that you're looking at. And from the beginning, I'm going to describe 2 shapes to you that I imagine you might see, the audience might see, but I see a peak, a medium peak, and then a big peak. And then it kind of went away. And we thought in July of 2021 that we thought it was gone. And then what happened? We saw another peak. It came down, this kind of mini humpy peak in there, and then it peaked again. It's almost like it's repeating a pattern. And once again in July, so you see how July of 2021 was as low as it had ever been?
Right, and now it is as well.
Correct.
It's also coming down in July of 2020. Look at that.
Correct. Well, that was the first run and before the big peak.
Don't you get less flu and stuff in the summer?
That's what I'm wondering.
Whatever.
Right. So we're seeing not just the seasonality, but the shape of the curves. This W. Now, the middle peak is not as pronounced on the right-hand side as it is on the left, but there is that little hump and dip. Yeah. A little bit. It's a similar pattern. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, wait a second, this is starting to look like an EKG or something. This is bump. Is this going to continue for the next 5, 7, 8, 9 years? Because SARS-CoV-1 didn't, MERS didn't.
Yeah,
in fact, neither of them killed 1,000 people.
Right.
1,000 people didn't die from SARS-1. 1,000 people didn't die from MERS. So we haven't seen anything like this, I don't believe, from a coronavirus. But again, I'm not a doctor. So if there's an epidemiologist out there that can say, oh, no, we have other coronaviruses that it's exactly like this, but in dogs or whatever, we want to hear about that. That would be great. So I don't know. Do we have any more time or we got to go to our Patreon only?
We got about 2 minutes.
Okay. So maybe, we can go with this next slide. This is okay. So Paul Gosar, I think, is a congressman, and I think he's a dentist. And he's kind of an interesting character. This is a guy whose entire family has said he shouldn't be in Congress and he's unfit to be in public and he should be locked up.
What?
Yeah, it's
his
the
family says that?
strangest backstory you've ever seen is this Paul Gosar guy. So if this is who I'm thinking of, again, I could be completely off base.
Yeah, he is a
but I
congressman and a dentist.
Yeah, I think that's the story.
An officer and a gentleman.
Yeah, and he's got a whole problem with his brothers and sisters hate him. And it's like, oh,
nice teeth.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, but the point is, he put a resolution forward to end the emergency declaration. That's good. He has 111 signatories, and he's saying, I'm waiting for other Republicans to join. So this is a congressman. This is a U.S. congressman who's saying, hey, I think this thing needs to come to an end after 2.5 years. He might be looking at that chart that we just looked at, where it was all the way down on the right, and thinking, this doesn't appear to still be an emergency. So who knows? But this is his resolution. This is something that's going forward. and you guys can see this on Twitter. This is Paul Gosar, Dr. Paul Gosar on Twitter. And he has a resolution to end the emergency declaration. And from my perspective, you know, I don't want to say anything to get us in trouble, but
Right.
I understand where he's coming from, and I'll just leave it at that. From an empathy, right? I'm an empath, right? I'm an empath.
Yeah.
I empathize with his feelings, and I respect him and his feelings and how he identifies as a dentist.
Well, Corky Goss is expressing his or her concern that a mask tsunami may be coming. I hope that's not the case. We'll have to see. But
a mask tsunami.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Sharknado. You know?
Yeah, I hope not. I certainly hope not.
We don't need a Sharknado. But we're going to be back in just under 4 minutes. People can join us for the sponsor exclusive segment on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, Subscribestar, and Patreon/CrowdsourceTheTruth. And a tremendous thank you to the sponsors that make all of these shows possible. If you're just watching the free shows on Crowdsource the Truth, take a moment to consider that none of this content would be here without the viewer sponsors. So if you've been watching for a while and you're not a sponsor, join me and John. We're going to be back in 4.5 minutes with a deep dive on this material, and we'll see everybody on Patreon and